Child, how many books I've been reading, what I've been reading, and where I've been. I've been reading everything. Ooh, we have got a mess. It's all right. It's all right. I got coffee and water because hydration is the order of the day. This might be my last mug of coffee. My resident babysitter, aka Mr. Librarian, he may put me on a caffeine list. Child, but I'm gonna drink this while I can. D D B D D B B boo 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 ba ba da 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 ba ba ba. If you know, you know. Anybody else standing out? That's all I'm gonna do. I ain't gonna do the whole routine for y'all. I ain't gonna do it for that. I'm just leave it. I'm gonna leave it right there. That's all. That's all. Let me not tarry long. Hey book unicorns, welcome and welcome back to the channel. My name is Chrissy. Welcome back to the Purple Library. It might be a bit of a Powerline concert, so y'all already know all the things. I got all these books stacked around here. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna try not to tarry long, but I might tarry long, y'all. What am I saying? What have I been reading lately? You know, wrap up videos, they come and go on the channel. It's a mix of different content come and do on the channel, so we're just gonna go on and face. I wanted to talk about some of my favorite books over the past few months or so. I don't think I did a wrap up since May. Your girl always doing that read. A summer highlight into fall. What am I currently reading? Hopefully this hair ain't gonna be static. The girl didn't know till pre-edit, and I won't about to film again. So whatever mishaps and shenanigans are present, they will continue to be present. First, I want to talk about a couple of books that I DNF. Not many, only have two. The It Girl by Ruth Ware. This was a buddy read I did with Teresa. We both DNF that book 20%. We right here with the If It Fall, It Fall. Buddy reads be really entertaining and fun because we DNF the same books. Yeet Yeet City. And I was like, ooh, I really love Ruth, but I don't know if I can get with this one. It was just a bit too much of a slog fest. And I think it was because it was told in a flashbacks of the characters in present day. And then we go back to their dynamic in college. And it's pretty much just following this it girl who's pretty rich. She is murdered. Who did it? Was it one of her friends? Was it an unreliable narrator? You know, that kind of framework. And so it sounded entertaining. None of the chapters were labeled with like where we are in the timeline, and it just was given the same thing over and over. And I said over, no, won't be said to me. DNF City. So I DNF'd it at 20%, but I'm not giving up on Ruth Ware's books. I have some more on my shelf, and I really like the potential in her writing. There's I don't know if I just haven't read her Pièce de la Résistance. You know, maybe I haven't read the book of books, and maybe she hasn't written it yet, but there's something about Ruth Ware's writing that has me hooked. I'm here for it. The next book I DNF was The Lost Queen by Signe Pike. And y'all, this one, it was me and not the book. For premise of it, I'm looking down at my tablet, y'all. Y'all know I ain't got no notes or plans or nothing like that. I'm just space. Just out and I need to. Outlander meets Camelot. That's all I need. That's all I need to know. I really enjoy Arthur legends, Arthur retellings, kind of Arthurian setting in a book. This was very intriguing to me. I really enjoyed this book. The writing was so beautiful. It was completely immersive. It was a very engaging story, but it leaned a little bit too heavy in the Scottish mysticism for me, for my convictions. And so 60%, I was pretty much a little more than halfway through. Your girl DNF a book at 90% though. I'm not opposed to DNF in a book at any point. 5%, 20, 50, 70, 90. If it falls, it falls. DNF it where you feel like DNF. Feel like I'm not gonna like a book. I do try to give it the halfway page point. I wouldn't say I would not recommend it to anyone to read. There is a small scene between a couple, a little bit of a sexual content, but it's definitely skippable. It's at the end of a chapter and it goes on, but you can kind of see where it's going. So that's the only thing in the content I would say. My reading experience, it was definitely more Scottish mysticism. I really like the political things in it, but just for me, it didn't work. So I have to go with my convictions. So check it out, see if it's something that you want to enjoy, but just keep in mind there is some stronger mysticism, a little bit of a sexual content in there, and some violence too. Violence, gory parts in there, unsettling scenes. Definitely more of an adult historical, speculative, magical story. So just keep that in mind. If it fall, it fall though. So yeah, so the past few months though, I have read a lot of amazing books. I didn't want to talk about all of the books I've read over the past 3 months or so, but my Goodreads is linked down below. You can look at all the other books that I have not mentioned, so feel free to check those out. There are a lot of amazing books that I read. Dear Mr. Nightingale, Wrong Place, Wrong Time, A Treacherous Curse, Veronica and Stoker, Aftermath, The Good Sister. So kind of want to focus on some of my favorites of the favorite that I've read, and also some ones that you may not have heard of as much, or I wanted to share my thoughts on them because I really enjoyed them. You skip around and watch what you want to watch in the video, huh? Thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe too, just in case. Just Jane Austen, July and August. And so for Jane Austen, July, Pride and Prejudice. Oh my goodness, you guys. Look at the annotations. Will you just look? Jane, girl. Yes. All the things we need. It's the letters. This is a highly well-loved and circulated classic. It's probably one of the most favorite classics of all time for so many different readers. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and now I can say I have officially read Pride and Prejudice, and it was everything that I thought it would be. It exceeded my expectations. Of course, 5 stars. I buddy read this with Brooke, Pages, and Blessings. It was just so much fun. We had a fantastic time reading this and sharing our thoughts and discussions. I absolutely love buddy reads. Buddy reads are so much fun. It just enhances the reading experience. You know, your girl always cackling and in the chat real hard. It just solidified why Mr. Darcy is Mr. Darcy and the #1 swoon-worthy male character. I mean, I did watch the 95 Pride and Prejudice miniseries, which I think is absolutely great, especially if reading Jane Austen it is pretty dense. It's not the most complex Jane Austen book I've read. Watching the miniseries helps really flesh out the characters, kind of flesh out the setting a bit more, character dynamics, because there's more dialogue in this book, 3 more in her canon that I need to read. I highly recommend this if you haven't read it. It can be a bit challenging. It is a little dense with the word structure, and since Regency and Prestige ports you into a different time period and a different world as far as chivalry and relationships and expectations and the agency that women have, and that marrying is really the only option that a lot of women in this society had. Very interesting in that perspective, and Jane Austen's writing is just absolutely beautiful, very thought-provoking and intriguing. Mr. Bennet is everything I need. Mrs. Bennet, her garden is a little small. Her garden is real small, but it's beautiful. I mean, it was just a fantastic time. Jane Austen August, I finished Persuasion, and this I believe was the last Jane Austen book that she wrote. Annotations, you guys, annotations. Although this is probably one of her smallest novels, I'm not sure if the page count is different, but I would say this is probably the densest or the most complex to read. Persuasion and with Pride and Prejudice, I had the audiobooks, which I highly recommend, and then not have the audiobook kind of reading it with me, so I'm processing the information a lot easier how my brain is set up. So the audiobook was imperative, and so I dare not venture in without the audiobook. It was fantastic, and I think I read most of this in the course of 2 days because it wasn't that long, but once the story got going, it got going. And Elliot, and she broke off her engagement with Frederick Wentworth, and though she really loved him, she followed the advice of Lady Russell. She's like a villain that I didn't even see coming. I'm gonna just leave that there. Nah, fam. 8 years later, life has moved past her, and Frederick Wentworth is now a captain, and he's come back to the local area, and what is she gonna do? Wentworth had the glow up of a lifetime, and her family has kind of declined in social status in a way, because her daddy, he don't know what a budget means. He don't understand the meaning of a budget, none of that stuff. So he just spending money, and the vanity, the narcissism, and the audacity of a lot of the characters around her, including Lady Russell, and is just kind of swallowed up by all of these different personalities, and no one can really see her. And in a way, it's kind of her fault. 8 years later, everybody's back in town. The drama, the letters, and all the Jane Austen that you are looking for. And what I really liked about this was Anne's character. And I feel like, and this is just my opinion, I haven't looked into this at all or the validity of this, but this is just what I'm garnering from it. I feel like this was Jane Austen's, kind of autobiography in a way. I don't really know much about Jane Austen and her personal life. If you guys know any details about her, let me know in the comments down below. More of Jane in this story than any of her other stories. stories and that I've read, I really love Anne as a character. She is just a brave and dynamic woman, and she is so accommodating, and she's very humble, and she's very observant. Over the time where she had the 8 years, she grew up a lot, and she got a lot of backbone, and she stood up for herself, and she was not swayed by people's words. She was very observant of all the things that were happening around her and the different social dynamics. And because everyone thought Anne was so unassuming and they just took her presence for granted, thought she could just be a doormat for everyone and they could just word vomit all of their things on her and she would just take it. But to see how she processed through all of that, this is some serious slow burn right here. Like the OG slow burn. Out of all the female characters or heroines that I've read from Jane Austen, Anne is my favorite. Anne is just in completely wholesome and level-headed and genuine, a grounded heart and perception. And she was impressionable at a young age. Anybody would be impressionable at a young age, especially for people who, you know, you esteem and you view as mentors, view as them having the answers, proving they didn't know they was talking about. That's kind of eye-opening, wouldn't you say? But the core of who she was remained the same. She made some mistakes, but she learned from them. And it was beautiful to see other people acknowledge that in her, including Captain Wentworth, who I like the fact that Anne is older. Anne is not, 16, 17, 19 years old. Anne is 27 years old, I believe. And she's kind of considered a spinster at this point. It was very encouraging to say bloom at different times and to see Anne bloom so beautifully in the story, even when people had wrote her off and she kind of gave up on herself a little bit. But when she stepped out, just be brave and bold in situations, her true character and who she has always been came to the forefront for everyone to see. 5 stars. Anne is my favorite Jane Austen heroine. Jane Austen, everybody, Jane Austen. Let's talk about the YA trash heart books. The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the second book in the Inheritance Games trilogy. I am so thrilled. Did I pick up the second one? I did, but see that was the book buying ban is still, listen, I ain't got no reason. YA trash heart time. Mystery, family drama, who's gonna get the money? That's all we need to know. Continue on right where we left off in the first book. And I gave this 3 stars. Did I give this 3 stars? There was nothing like superbly fantastic. Will I reread this series? Yes. Am I keeping it on my shelf? Yes. This was a good time. There was a little bit more content in it than the first one. So just kind of a PG-13 kind of rating for a book. Some language, innuendos in it. I really enjoyed how the mystery is folding. Stay tuned because we're here for it. Legendary and Finale. I finished these 2 books I needed to know. 2 and book 3 in the Caraval Series, a magical circus with sisters and there's a man. There's 2 of them. I mean, 2 sisters, both have to have love interest. Why did those books fall? Guys, I had such a phenomenal time. I gave both of these books 4 stars. So I guess YA fantasy. So y'all know I'm a little biased to fantasy books. I mean, come on. Action, action, action. Surprise, surprise. Reveal, reveal. Magic, magic. In this world, in this night game, circus, puzzle, whimsical, immersive. Stephanie, girl, you can paint a world. Really excited to start the sequel series now. Feel like that's kind of where I've been in my bag lately. And we love to see it. We thank God for it. The adult fantasy, Jade Legacy. Y'all, let's give a round of applause. A round of applause. Good girl. I actually finished Jade Legacy. This book came out last year, or the year before last. Let me see. Was it the year before last? Because it's 2023 now. Yeah, it came out in 2021. It stayed on my year TBR for 2 years, huh? So about 18 months it stayed on my TBR. I am so glad that I finished this book. This is the final book in the Green Bone saga. It was phenomenal. 5 stars. Plans, Jade, murder, and vengeance, burdens and feuds, failures passed down from father to son to brother to nephew, all of it full of malleable truths that took time to discover and to accept. The conclusion of this series was so satisfying and my expectations were incredibly subverted. This is gritty, it's hard-hitting, explosive urban fantasy series. A similarity would be like The Sopranos and The Godfather, that type of tone and that type of content. Language, violence, death, suicide, sexual content, same-sex relationship. The content is skippable. Please go in knowing that this is very, very sated in a lot of that kind of content. So just be aware of that. Didn't impact me in my reading. A fantastic way to end the series. And I was just so satisfied. She got me to cry. Fonda played too much. The book was on my head the whole time, y'all. It was very well executed, very well done. I don't know what I was thinking starting Hobb book and Jade Legacy, but I did. And so more to come on that. Hobb Emotional Support Group, I see you out there. The complex generational story that's told. I really love complex stories about multi-generational families, especially in an adult urban fantasies. This is not for everyone. So if you are definitely familiar with, more adult fantasy, this is a very high commitment. And of course, some of the content I could have done without, but that's the context of the story. I was thoroughly surprised and my expectations were subverted. Elantris by Sanderson. I give this book 5 stars. Let me just look at what my Goodreads says. So I ain't gotta. This book was wild. And the annotations. Let's look at it. Let's look at it. Woo-wee! I buddy read this with Lindsay. What this is about, Elantris was a beautiful city ran by the gods, but long story short, and they all got sick, and then everyone who got the sickness was banished to Elantris. And so what happens now when stirrings of the dead people in Elantris, I think that's about, that's pretty much it. Our main heroine, what is our main girl's name? Listen, y'all know my name. Headcanon is trash. Serene. We're following Serene, who is our heroine in the story. Phenomenal character, very heroic. I feel like this is probably, to me, Brandon Sanderson's most underrated work. I have read pretty much all of his Cosmere, working my way through the Cosmere. 30 to 40% mark. The story took off, and then the Sanderlanche happened about 75% into the book. Your girl was out. And I was so satisfied for this to be his first published work, Brandon Sanderson. I was not expecting it to be so good, and I see now why it's so good. I don't know why I didn't think it would be, but usually the first works can be a little shaky, but no wonder he's so good. I mean, seriously, I highly recommend this book. It is a standalone. I know Brandon Sanderson books have a very high commitment level to them, but the audiobook is really great as well. This is adult fantasy. Just keep in mind there is some violence and gore and some very tough situations that happen for a lot of the characters. So just keep in mind, you definitely want to be aware of some of the content. I was in a hangar for a couple days with this book. Lindsay and I were Choco City. The last book in the Mistborn Era 2 by Brandon Sanderson, The Lost Metal. Y'all know I'm always annotating my fantasy. This was a fantastic way to end this phenomenal series. It continues the story of Wax and Wayne, and just the ending was really good. It was refreshing. It's definitely different than any of the other Sanderson books I've read. It's a different tone, different characters, but it has the same Brandon-esque quality to it. Gave this 4 stars. It wasn't as epic and as mind-blowing as Elantris was for me, but I think it was a solid ending for the series. And so now it's official. Your girl can start the Stormlight Archive. Will I be starting the Stormlight Archive this year? I don't know. Definitely next year. I recommend the Mistborn Era 2 series. You want to read Mistborn Era 1 because there's so many Easter eggs throughout Mistborn Era 2. A lot of implications and Easter eggs and characters that show up as well. So it hit. Brandon, you playing too much, bro. You're playing. Christian fiction books that I've read that I have enjoyed as well. First one is Harvest of Rubies by Tessa Afshar. This is my first Tessa Afshar that I have read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I give it 5 stars. So we're following our main character, Sarah. This is set in the biblical setting prior to the Israelites, before they are released to return back. See the prophet Nehemiah. This centers around Sarah and her interactions as a very successful scribe in the Persian court to the Persian queen. She is forced into a arranged marriage as the queen's scribe, and follows her journey of faith and her ambition and her relationship with the Lord, her grappling with her identity in God rather than in her skills and in her career. And so it was just a very refreshing perspective about that. And I was not expecting that to be the theme and the tone of the book. I really, really enjoyed the relationship she had with Darius and their marriage, and to see how their relationship unfolds and the challenges and the tragedies tragedy that it consists of as well. It really reads like a coming of age story for Sarah, and I just highly recommend it. I have book 2 and I plan on reading that as well. So it's going to continue the story of Sarah and Darius, and I'm really excited. And I highly recommend this one as well. So yeah, Harvest of Rubies, fantastic time. The Skin Map by Stephen R. Lawhead. And I know the title is a little off-putting because, you know, there is a roadmap to portals and entry points, kind of like time travel meets Indiana Jones. And y'all know I love me time travel, but it follows Kit Livingston, whose grandfather appears to him out of nowhere and says, hey man, you got that time traveler capability, huh? Your daddy had it. He didn't want it. I got it. His daddy didn't want it. And so I'm coming to you, see if you want to come hang out with me and do some time travel things. And so Kit, in his ignorance and naivety, causes a whole bunch of drama. And so they're trying to track down the skin map. And the originator of the skin map actually had these different specific ley lines tattooed on his skin. It sounds worse than it is. Cautious Chrissy here. She ain't going to read nothing that's scary. So don't even worry about that. So you can rest assured, Christine. I wasn't scared reading this. So don't be scared. It's very adventurous. Kit and his great-grandfather are trying to track down this map. I had a fantastic time with this. I gave this 4 stars. I'm really excited to continue this series. I highly recommend The Wonderland Trials by Sarah Ella. It is a Alice in Wonderland reimagining. My caveat is I haven't read the original Alice in Wonderland, so I don't really know how close this is to the classic Alice in Wonderland, but if you have read it, let me know how close it is to it. It was such a wonderful, whimsical time. Alice wants to be normal, but normal is the key to unlocking the curious reality. And so there's like a mix of technology here and whimsy and games, and there is a man, a coming of age, and it was just so refreshing to read this. I'm really excited to continue this series. I had a wonderful time with this, and look at the cover. Highly recommend. So if you're looking for a good, clean fantasy, and I would consider this is a Christian lead, not as in your face, more subtle faith in here. The faith that does come through is very profound and encouraging as well. I just thoroughly enjoyed this, and I think you would too. The book that caught me by surprise, The Blaze of Acktar. Y'all, listen, I gave this 5 stars. This book was so good. I first heard about this book from Celestria. She talked about it's one of her favorite Christian fantasy series. There's a magical setting, but there's no magic. But the faith in this book was so good. Following an assassin who was considered the third blade, and the king in this world, he is on a mission to kill all of the Christians. He uses this group of, I believe, 9 assassins. The higher the number, the more deadly you are. So he's sent to kill a specific family, but instead he is transformed. Family nurses him back to health, and in turn they really give him the gift of faith. Love story here, story subplot was intriguing, but what really got me was the faith in this book and the excitement and the different characters and the suspense and the trial of what's going to happen and the danger and his whole survival depends on his obedience. How's that going to impact his questions that he has as well about his faith? And actually set in wintertime, I think it's great to read in winter. It has a allegory to Daniel in the lion's den. Absolutely phenomenal. I can't wait to continue the series. It surprised me. I knew it would be good, but I didn't know it was going to be this good. Blaze of Acktar, amazing. It's now a favorite of all time. This Price of Darkness by Frank Peretti. I buddy read this with Teresa, and oh my goodness. People have recommended this book to me, and this summer was a phenomenal time for me to read it. I felt drawn to it, and Teresa and I read this together, and it was incredibly impactful. For the saints of God and for the Lamb continues to minister to me. This book continues to show itself very pivotal. Prayer is the currency of heaven. To see how the spiritual realm and the physical realm and our realm interact with one another through prayer definitely presents a plausible way of how the angels of the Lord help assist us in the earth and keep us in the Lord's way. And that was so incredibly tangible in the story. It centered in a very small town, which appears to have no significant implications to anything happening in the world. But that could be further from the truth, for there are principalities and powers in the air vying for power, vying for the spirits and the souls of those who live in this town. One of my favorites of all time now. If you've read it, you know. I don't want to say too much about it because how the story unfolds is as impactful as finding out about why these things are occurring in this small town. And it just helped encourage me. It encouraged me to continue to pray, and that the people of God should always continue to pray, to stay in a posture of prayer, not just to pray selfishly for what I want the Lord to do in my life, but to pray for the body of Christ, to pray for those who have yet to come into the fold of Christ, to pray in which way that the Lord leads us to pray, and to not cease doing that, because the battle isn't between flesh and blood. The rulers, the principalities, the powers, the cosmic powers of the air. 5 stars, favorite of all time. I highly, highly, highly recommend. And Tenacious too. Yeah. The Christian nonfiction books that I finished, Faithfully Different by Natasha Crane. This book was just welcome to your place in the worldview minority. And it really just discusses what it means to have a biblical worldview, how as believers what that means to have a biblical worldview. It challenges the things that I thought to be true about the biblical worldview, differences in the secular worldview, how to identify and respond to today's most significant worldview pressures, cancel culture and secular social justice, progressive Christianity, and deconstruction and virtue signaling. And it really goes into all of those topics so thoroughly and so engaging and effectively, letting the reader make the decision. It provides a lot of different resources as well. It's not as big, but it took me a while to get through this because it's so much information packed into this. Really encourages and talks about how to engage effectively in a world that ridicules biblical truths. Highly recommend this. Challenging, but incredibly impactful. Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortlund. This was a buddy read I did with my best friend Monique. We had a fantastic time reading this, and also too, this was a gift from a subscriber. Angela, if you're watching, thank you so much for gifting this book to me. I certainly appreciate it. It was incredibly significant to me, and I just appreciate your thoughtfulness in partnering with me. And this is just absolutely phenomenal. Definitely encouraged me in a different way to really see Christ, to appropriate his grace and his mercy to my life in a more deeper level. Things that really stood out, that he will no wise cast you out. Christ did all the work for us, and that we just have to come in faith and authenticity and truth of ourselves. And he has done all of it. And he's not going to cast us out because he understands. He went through everything. Another thing that stood out to me was when the scriptures talk about Jesus was acquainted and he did not fall to sin. And so that's why we have victories, because Jesus had victory for us. And so we can appropriate that to our lives. Amazing. Highly recommend. 5 stars. Lastly, I finished The Purpose of Man by A.W. Towzer. This is a bind-up of 3 of his books. Yes, thank you so much. Lindsay, hey girl, hey, gifted this book to me last year. Making my way through Towzer Purpose of Man. I buddy read this again with Teresa. Teresa and me out here reading all these books, child. We out here doing that reading, okay? Pastor Towzer would just preach all by himself. You give him the scriptures, you give him a hymn, you give him a pen, and he's going to preach the word, okay? I really, really appreciate it that I learned about the purpose of man. And essentially the purpose of man is to worship him in spirit and in truth. Delved into a lot more deeper aspects of the purpose of man and what worship looks like. How we can demonstrate that in our lives in authenticity and be grounded in God's word. I highly recommend. I plan on reading all of his canon, or many of Towzer's books that I can get my hands on. 5 stars. I'm really excited and looking forward to reading The Crucified Life. Let me read a quote from you from The Purpose of Man that I found incredibly impactful. Worship is not a spotlight focusing on one area of life. True worship that is pleasing to God, radiates throughout a person's entire life. And that's all we need to know. So what am I currently reading? Murder in the Paperback. This is the second book in the book retreat. I really like Ellery Adams. The first book, which I think was what was it? I used to know where all the books are at a glance.
I don't know.
I gotta get my spreadsheet and look and see where the books are. So I can't find nothing no more. Fine, it's fine. We work it out. Oh, it's right here. I can tell you what it is right here. See, I knew what I was doing. Murder in the Mystery Suite. So I'm really excited to delve back into this cozy mystery. It's that time of year. In This Moment by Gabrielle Meyer. Buddy read with Lindsay, Tay, Emily, and Laura. This is book 2 in the Timeless series. First book being When the Day Comes, Chokehold City. I cried. I love some time travel and historical fiction, Pearl Harbor and 9/11 in this timeline. So if y'all haven't read When the Day Comes, you might want to check it out. Firefly Diaries by C.C. Warren. I recently did a read with me while I was reading about 100 pages or so of this book, and it's a fantastic time. Buddy reading this with Mrs. Thomas. A wonderful, wonderful time. I really love the character of Noelle. This is a Christian mystery following Noelle. Adrift in her grief, she finds herself drawn to an Ohio, and she's thinking if she can mend the house, maybe it'll help her mend the brokenness that she's feeling on the inside as well. But the house isn't everything it seems. Mysterious characters, and there's a man. And all of the mystery surrounding this house. Stacy recommended it to Mrs. Thomas. He recommended for us to read, for our buddy read. I'm having a fantastic time. Pretty brown girl on the cover. Say less. And finally.
And
I mean that, y'all. It's been finally, because it's been about 9 months since I said anything. But Hobb, everybody. We're back. Hobb, emotional support group. I see you out there. So we're back. We're back with Hobb. Get ready. Buckle up, because Hobb content coming to the channel. Was I in a 9-month book hangover? Absolutely. I was in a very extensive book hangover. And if I'm being honest, I really appreciate my sponsor for really, staying on my back. Because it was a lot to go through, and there was a lot of things I had to process. But this is book 2 in the Rain Wild Chronicles. So book 1 was a great time. I gave book 1 4 stars, and 4-book series. Don't want to tell you too much about this. Dragon Haven with dragons, new characters. This is a very adventurous, very interesting to read the different characters, following 2 characters, Myra and Elise. That I'm sure that's not how you say their names, but that's how I'm saying it, Myra and Elise. So, dragons have returned to the realm. This is the adventure that they're on. I guess you could call it a haven. Is giving problematic. Stay tuned, because Hobb is coming back to the channel. Hair and emotions will be disheveled, but I'm gonna do my part in the Hobb emotional support group.
Woo child, y'all had me.
Deepy. So let me know, how has your reading been? What's been your favorite book that you've read recently? And also too, let me know, what's your favorite quote? Let's drop some prose in the comments. I love to talk all the books. Do I need more book recommendations? Yes, and you do too. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.